Hello and welcome to the first KS3 Maths Lesson. Today we're at probability, what probability is, how you use it, and why we use probability. To start with, what is probability? So probability is the chance of something happening. You've probably heard this called chance or luck, but it's actually called probability. It can be expressed in different ways. It can be a fraction, it can be a decimal, it can be a percentage, or it can be on a probability scale like this one. Probability is tracked from impossible all the way up to certain. So impossible is definitely not going to happen, all the way up to certain it's definitely going to happen. So probability or chance is how likely something is to happen. If it has a low probability, it's unlikely. If something has a high probability, it's likely to happen. So it is unlikely that it will be sunny all through October in the UK. A high probability would be it is likely it will rain at some point during October in the UK. So here's just a warm-up question for you guys. So Greta has this spinner. What's her chance of spinning the numbers in the word boxes below? Match each box to the correct word. An odd number is the first one done for you, which is an even chance. So if you just pause the video, tell me how likely it is for her to spin at A2 and how likely it is for her to spin a number less than 10. I'll give you 1 minute to do that. Okay, let's go through the answers. So there are no 2's on the spinner, so therefore it would be impossible for her to spin a 2. Every single number on the spinner is less than 10. Therefore, it is guaranteed, certain, that she will get a number less than 10. So now we're going to start talking about the language of probability and how we can plot that on the scale. So if something's certain, we give it a number of 1. So the sun will rise tomorrow. The sun always rises, so it is certain to happen. An even chance is the same as half. So getting the tails when you toss a coin, there's only 2 sides, you're just as likely to land on either one. Not likely would be rolling a 6 on a dot. There's only 1 6 and there's 6 sides, so there's a 1 in 6 chance. Impossible would be a 0. For example, rolling an 8 on a dice. Can you try and think of how we could word very likely in that gap, please? I'll give you another 30 seconds to do that. Okay, let's move on then. Can you answer this question? You can spin any number from 1 to 6 on this spinner. Write a number that is impossible to spin. And the second question would be, these marbles are hidden in a bag. The bag is shaken. Pete pulls out 1 marble without looking. Which kind of marble is Pete most likely to pull out? Explain how you know. If you need to go backwards and pause, please do. Can you answer these 2 questions? Okay, let's go through the answers. You can spin any number from 1 to 6 on a spinner. Write a number that is impossible to spin. So any number that's less than 1 or bigger than 6 would be correct, because there are no numbers less than 1 and there are no numbers greater than 6. For the second question, these marbles are hidden in a bag. The bag is shaken. Pete pulls out 1 marble without looking. What kind of marble is Pete most likely to pull out? So if you count the amount of marbles in the bag, there are a lot more white compared to the other ones. Therefore, he's a lot more likely to pull out a white one. Right, now we've got the terminology sorted, we're going to go into how to explain probability as a fraction. And the example I'm going to use is a dice. So work out the probability of throwing an even number on a dice. So the first thing you need to do is count up the total number of possible results. So for this question, how many sides on the dice are there? So there are 6 sides on a dice. Stage 2, count up the number of results you're interested in. So how many even numbers are there? So there are 3 even numbers on a dice, 2, 4 or 6. We can then go into stage 3 where the probability of getting an even number on a dice is 3 chances out of 6. So you'd write that as 3 over 6. So 3 would be the amount of even numbers, 6 would be the amount of sides on a dice. So 3 over 6. This can be cancelled down to 1 over 2, or a half, which is the same as an even chance. There's another example for you. So the probability of getting tails when you toss a coin is 1 in 2. There is 1 tails and 2 sides to a coin, so it'd be 1 over 2. Probability is most commonly shown as a fraction. So when you come to answer questions in exams or question papers, most probabilities will be shown as a fraction. Can you use the knowledge that you've just learned to try those 4 questions, and I will go through one of them with you after you've finished. So if you pause the slides now for a few minutes and answer those questions. Okay, I said I would go through one of them with you, so I'm going to go through question 1. What is the probability of rolling a 4 with a dice? So stage 1 would be count how many possible outcomes there are, so how many sides on a dice. So there are 6 sides on a dice. You then need to calculate the outcomes that you're interested in, so how many 4s are on the dice. That would be 1. So the probability of rolling that one would be 1 over 6. 6 sides on the dice, 1 over 6. So now you know how to write probability as a fraction. We're now going to show you how to do it as a decimal. So to convert a fraction to a decimal, you take the top number and you divide it by the bottom number. So the probability of getting tails when you toss a coin is 1 in 2, so 1 over 2. To change that to a decimal, you do 1 divided by 2. The probability of 3/4 can also be shown as 0.75, so 3 divided by 4. To go further with this, you can also convert decimals into percentages by timesing by 100. So the probability of getting tails when you toss a coin is 1 in 2. 1 divided by 2 will give it you as a decimal, which is 0.5. If you take that decimal 0.5 and times it by 100, you will get 50%. For the second one, the probability of 3/4 can be shown as 0.75. So 3 divided by 4 equals 0.75. 0.75 times 100 will equal 75%. Can you use that information to answer those 4 questions, please? So if you want to pause the slides for a few minutes, can you answer those questions? Okay, well done you guys, let's move on. So now we're going to look at probability scales. These go from impossible all the way up to certain. So can you take those numbers 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 and place them on the probability scale where you think they will go? So which one of these is impossible, which one's certain, and where would they fall on the probability scale? So if you pause the screen for 2 minutes and then we will go through the answers. Okay, number 1, we have been through this already. The sun will rise tomorrow. It will definitely rise tomorrow, therefore that will be certain. You will live to be 500. That would be impossible. You spin a coin and get a head. We've already said that those are even chances. You'll see a buzz on your way home. That is likely. You'll see an ambulance on your way home. Usually this would be unlikely. However, because of where the school is and the ambulance centre just being around the corner, I can accept either unlikely or likely as long as you can explain your answer. So it will be likely that I see an ambulance on the way home because the ambulance depot is just around the corner. Here guys, here's some useful information for you which you will need. There are 52 playing cards in a pack. There are 4 suits: clubs, spades, diamonds and hearts. Clubs and spades are the black cards, diamonds and hearts are the red cards. There are 13 cards in each suit, starting at ace and going all the way up to king. And the last thing that you'll need to know for the next questions are a regular dice has the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. So there are 6 sides on a dice, all numbered 1 to 6. So if you need to pause this screen or rewind back to it to help answer questions, please do. Can you please give these questions a try? This should take you about 10 minutes, maybe 15. So you can pause this screen at any point, take your time answering the questions. Once you have finished this, there are some more questions to follow. These ones are based on the probability scale. So impossible starts with 0 and certain is at 1. So can you plot where the events will fall using a decimal, so between 0 and 1? For questions C and D, you will need to convert the fraction into a decimal. This is also based on the probability scale. Can you describe events that you think has a probability of? And then can you plot on the top one where the A, B and C will go? Okay, for these questions, it's got the number of desired outcomes, probability equals number of desired outcomes divided over the number of possible outcomes. That is just how you'd write it as a fraction. So using the dice as an example, the number of possible outcomes would be 6 because there's 6 sides on a dice, and there are 3 even numbers, so 3 will get at the top, so it would be 3 over 6. It's just a different way of writing it, but you have gone through it during the previous slides. If you need to go back to have a look to remind yourself, please do. Okay, and now we're going to move on to the extension activity. For this you'll need 1 coin, and I want you to fill in that table. I want you to flip it 30 times and fill in the table which side it lands, heads or tails. For the next one you're going to need a dice, and I want you to roll that 30 times and do the same thing. Record how many 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s and 6s you get. And then from this I want you to calculate the probability of getting the heads or tails and calculate the probability of getting the numbers 1 to 6. This is all based on your experiments that you are doing. So this is called experimental probability. I hope you've enjoyed the lesson. Please send all your work into the Edge Academy so we can get it marked and get it back out to you. And that concludes your first lesson on probability.